There is a hollow scooped into the floor of a cave, and inside it lies a child. He is small, 12, maybe 13 years old, and laid across his chest, cradled in the crook of his own skeletal arms, are the antlers of a great deer. Someone severed those antlers from a living animal. Someone carried them into the dark. Someone folded them into the boy's hands, the way you would place something precious into the grip of a person you loved. And then they covered the ground around him in red. Why would anyone do this? Why would a starving, freezing, endangered animal, because that is what we were, spend the last of its strength on a corpse that could not eat, could not fight, could not thank them? This is not a burial of convenience. This is not tossing a body away from the living. This is effort and care and something stranger than either. This grave is 100,000 years old, and it may be the oldest proof we have that a human mind once looked at death and decided it meant something. To understand this grave, you have to throw away almost everything you think you know about where we come from. We did not begin in the painted caves of France. We did not begin in Europe at all. Europe came late to the human story. The people who dug this grave lived on a hillside in what is now the Galilee, in northern Israel, at a cave we call Kafse. And they lived there 100,000 years ago. Let that number sit for a moment, because our minds are not built to hold it. When these mourners knelt in the dirt, anatomically modern humans, people with faces like yours, brains like yours, would not settle permanently in Europe for another 60,000 years. 60,000 years. That is longer than all of recorded history stacked on itself 20 times over. Everything you have ever read about in a history book fits many times inside the gap between this grave and the first human footprints in Europe. These were not primitive ancestors fumbling toward humanity, half-formed, waiting to become us. They were us early, yes, but us. Same body, same skull, same capacity, folded up inside, waiting for the world to draw it out. And Kafse is not one lonely grave, dug in a moment of grief and then forgotten. The cave holds the remains of at least 15 individuals laid to rest across generations. It is one of the oldest, deliberate cemeteries of modern humans found anywhere on Earth. Think about what a cemetery is. It is a place chosen, a place returned to. A place where the dead are kept, not discarded, where you go back again and again to the ground that holds your people. That habit, that returning, is one of the deepest human instincts there is. And here it is already, 100,000 years ago, on a hillside in the Galilee. These were people who lived and died in a landscape that shifted between forest and open steppe, hunting gazelle and deer and wild cattle, gathering what the seasons gave them. They were not passing through. They stayed and they died and they buried their own in the same ground their children would walk over. Kafse even holds a double burial, a woman and a child laid together, the oldest kind of grief there is. And in one of those hollows lies a boy holding the antlers of a stag. We know more about this child than you might expect from a scatter of bones, because the bones themselves are a record of his life. Scientists gave him a name that is really a number, Kafse 11, and when they studied his skull with modern three-dimensional imaging, they found something that rewrote his whole short life. There's a wound on the front of his head, a depressed fracture, a piece of the skull driven inward toward the brain by a single hard blow. Something struck this boy hard enough to crack the bone and push it into the soft tissue beneath. Maybe a fall onto rock, maybe a stone thrown or swung. We cannot know the cause. But we can know the timing, and the timing is what stops you cold, because the wound healed. The bone grew back over the injury. The sharp edges rounded off. That takes time, months at least, which means he did not die from the blow. He was a young child when it happened, and he survived it. And here is the thing the researchers understood, and the thing that turns a lump of old bone into a story about love. A child with a head wound like that does not simply walk it off. The injury likely damaged his brain. His skull space came out smaller than it should have been for the age of his teeth, a sign that his growth stalled after the blow, that his development was slowed, perhaps that he was changed in the way he moved or thought or spoke. A child like that on a hard ice age hillside does not survive alone, not for a day. He survives only if someone carries him, feeds him, shelters him, watches him, protects him from every animal and every cold night. Someone chose him over and over for years. Someone decided that this slow, wounded, difficult child was worth the food he ate and the risk he was. That is the first act of love in this story, and it happened long before the grave. He beat the wound that should have killed him as a boy. What he could not beat was simply reaching the far edge of childhood in a world this brutal. He survived the thing that should have ended him, and then died anyway, young, of something we will never name. So he died. A boy his people had already saved once, already fought the world to keep, already carried through years he was never supposed to have. And when he died, instead of leaving him, instead of walking away the way almost every animal walks away from its dead, they did something that took time and effort and thought. They made red. Down in the cave, archaeologists recovered 71 separate pieces of red ochre, an iron-rich mineral that stains everything it touches, the deep, unmistakable color of dried blood. 71 pieces, that is not a smear grabbed in passing, that is a supply. A material these people sought out, carried, and kept, and here is the detail that reveals a working mind. Some of that ochre had been heated in fire deliberately before it was ground, because heat changes iron minerals, pushing the color from a dull orange toward a darker, richer, bloodier red. Sit with what that means. Someone had learned that if you cook a certain stone, its color deepens. Someone wanted that specific red, not the pale one, the deep one, badly enough to tend a fire for it and wait. This is chemistry 10,000 generations before anyone had a word for it. Knowledge passed down about how to transform the world to get the color you need. Then they ground it, stone against stone, over and over, patient and slow, until the hard lump became powder, and the powder, mixed with a little water or fat, became paint. This is labor. Real, measurable effort, the same kind you would spend on food, on tools, on the things that keep a living body alive. And they spent it on a boy who was already gone. They laid the red into the earth around him, over the ground where he rested, marking the place. Because red is the first color human beings ever loved. Not green, not blue, not the gold of the sun, red. Across the whole ancient world, wherever early people left us their choices, red comes first. The color of blood, of birth, of the fire that saves you and the wound that ends you, the color of being alive, and they pressed that color, the color of life itself, into the cold ground for someone who no longer had any. Now the antlers. This is the part to slow all the way down for, because this is the heart of the whole mystery. These were not just any bones that happened to be lying around the cave. They were the antlers of a fallow deer, big, sweeping, palm-shaped racks that a full-grown stag carries on his head like a crown, and they were severed. Cut deliberately from the animal's skull, separated from the head, carried into the cave, and chosen out of everything in the world for this one dead child. Understand the cost of that choice. To have those antlers, someone had to hunt and kill a powerful, dangerous animal or find one freshly dead. An antler is useful. It makes tools, points, handles, digging picks. It is a resource. And these people looked at that valuable material and decided it would not become a tool. It would become a gift for a corpse, and then the placement, which is where care becomes unmistakable. They did not throw the antlers in. They did not drop them on top. They laid them across his chest, and they folded them into his hands, The same small hands that in life someone had held while feeding him, while guiding him, while keeping him safe. Arranged now around this crown of bone held to his chest in a shape that across 100,000 years still reads unmistakably as an embrace. We do not know what the antlers meant to these people. We never will. Meaning does not fossilize, and no one wrote it down. But we can wonder honestly, maybe the stag was their kin, their strength, their protector, an animal they saw themselves in. Maybe it was the antlers themselves that mattered, because antlers do something almost magical. Every year they fall away, and every year they grow back larger than before. To people watching a child rot back into the earth, an object that dies and returns might have meant everything. Return, renewal. The promise that what is lost is not lost forever. Or maybe it meant something we could never translate, and everything to them. But the care is not in doubt. You can see it in the arrangement. Someone loved this boy. And someone believed, or needed to believe, that the loving should not stop just because his heart had. Here is why this grave matters more than almost anything else these people left behind in the ground. Everything else they did you can explain with survival. The flint tools cut meat, so the tools make sense. The fire kept off the cold and the predators, so the fire makes sense. The shelter kept off the rain. In that world, every calorie had to earn its keep, because wasted effort was death. A body that spent energy on things that did not help it survive did not get to have children who repeated the mistake. And yet here they spent hours, grinding ochre, cooking it for the deeper red, hunting or harvesting a stag's antlers, digging a grave, arranging a body with care, and it bought them nothing. The boy could not be fed by it. The band could not be warmed or defended or led to game by it. In the cold arithmetic of staying alive, this was pure waste, and they did it anyway. Which means something new had switched on inside these minds, the ability to spend real, costly effort on something you cannot see and cannot touch. Not the body in the ground, the body was just meat and bone now, and they knew it. The something else, the idea that the boy was more than his remains, that he still somehow was. This is the birth of the symbol, and the symbol is the thing that separates us from every other creature that has ever grieved. A symbol is when an object is made to mean more than it is, when antlers stop being antlers and start meaning love or return or farewell. When red powder stops being dirt and starts meaning life. And we have to be fair here because this is where the honest science lives. Animals grieve. Elephants stand over the bones of their dead and touch them with their trunks. Mother apes carry lost infants for days, refusing to let go. Grief is old. Grief is not ours alone, so we cannot say this boy's people were the first to feel loss. But grief is a feeling that happens to you. This is something more. This is grief turned outward, turned into action, turned into a thing you build with your hands. The leap from the pain you feel to the meaning you enact, from the ache inside your chest to the antlers you place on his. That leap is the beginning of every ritual, every ceremony, every story human beings have ever told to survive a loss. And once a mind can do that, once it can hold an idea that has no body and act on it and spend real effort to serve it, everything else becomes possible. The God you cannot see, the ancestor who still watches. The promise whispered over a deathbed that this is not truly the end. All of it begins with a mind willing to work for the invisible. And the oldest clear fingerprint of that mind is here, in the way a stag's antlers were folded, with terrible tenderness, into the arms of a dead child. So look back along the long road that runs away from this small cave. The great cathedrals with their vaulted stone ceilings, built to lift the eyes toward heaven. The pyramids raised over the bodies of god-kings. The stone circles aligned to catch the turning of the sun. The tombs, the temples, the shrines, the prayers whispered over the dying in every language that has ever been spoken on this earth. Every single one of them is a descendant of what happened here, on a stone floor in the Galilee, 100,000 years ago. Before any of it, before writing, before farming, before cities, before a single one of our kind had set foot in Europe, a grieving family knelt on this floor and did the first version of all of it. They made a red so deep they had to cook the stone to get it. They cut the crown from a great stag, and they laid that crown into the arms of a child they had already fought the whole world to keep alive once before. They could not save him the second time. Death does not negotiate. So they did the only thing a loving mind can do when it cannot win. They refused to let the loss be nothing. They said with an object, with a color, with their own hands in the cold dirt, this death means something. This life was not just an animal that stopped. This boy was here and he mattered and he still matters, and we will not simply hand him back to the earth as though he had never been at all. You will never learn his name because he never had one that we could read. He is a number in a scientific paper, a set of measurements, a shape pressed into ancient ground, catalogued and studied and dated 100,000 years after his heart went still. But 100,000 years ago, he was somebody's whole world, a difficult, wounded, beloved boy that someone carried through years he was never meant to have. And when that world ended, the people who loved him reached past their own grief and invented meaning to carry it. That stubborn, useless, breathtaking refusal to accept that a person is only a body, that is the most human thing we have ever dug out of the ground. It is the moment we became more than survivors, the moment we began to imagine that the story does not simply end. Before there were any temples, before there were any gods with names, before there was a single word for grief, we placed antlers on a boy. And in that quiet, aching, utterly useless act, the human heart invented the one thing that has carried us through every loss since. Meaning.